Welcome to Quantumly Kinky with Veda, where we talk about sex, Chinese medicine, and character development for the multidimensional you.
Episode 20. Bypassing isn't bad unless you're avoiding the turn on. Welcome back to Quantumly Kinky. I am your host, SarahVeda, and today we're going to be talking about the difference between healthy detachment and spiritual escapism. Why avoiding your edges might be the biggest kink you haven't owned yet. This week's sexy sermon is all about a word that triggers a lot of shadow: bypassing. We've all heard it. You're spiritually bypassing, or don't bypass your trauma, or sit in the discomfort. But what if that's not the whole picture? What if bypassing isn't always toxic? What if it's actually a skill, and when wielded with precision, self-awareness, and a turned-on nervous system, it can unlock a whole new power? So today we're going to unravel this concept of bypassing a little bit more. What exactly is toxic bypassing? What is healthy bypassing? And how do we know the difference in our body, our relationships, and our erotic choices? So let's start with the one we all know too well. Toxic bypassing is when we use positivity, spiritual jargon, or hyper independence to avoid being with the truth of our body. It can sound like, hey, everything happens for a reason, while your inner child is screaming, or I'm not available for low frequencies, while ghosting someone you're simply afraid to confront, or even love and light while suppressing deep rage, grief, or even sexual complexity. And energetically, toxic bypassing looks and feels like a freeze state disguised as enlightenment, or a blocked liver channel pretending to be clarity, even a sacral shutdown masquerading as high vibration. In Chinese medicine, 5-element theory, this is the fire element overacting on the metal element of your system. The heart, which is associated with fire, is pushing out a performance of peace, while the lungs, associated with the metal element, hold this unspoken grief that never got to exhale. This kind of toxic bypassing can actually disconnect us from our own erotic truth, our messy aliveness as a human, and our capacity to metabolize real pain into real power. Take a deep breath with me. Now let's reclaim this word. Healthy bypassing is when we consciously choose to regulate, redirect, or detach, not to avoid, but to alchemize. It's the difference between disassociating and consciously decoupling from the experience. It's the difference between avoiding pain and postponing emotional digestion until we're resourced enough. It's also the difference between reacting from the wound versus witnessing the wound and choosing a higher octave of action. Healthy bypassing can sound something like, I see this trigger, I'm not abandoning it, but I don't have to collapse into it today. Or, I'm choosing my joy even though grief is here. They can both exist. And my favorite, my erotic energy isn't for processing trauma right now. It's for plugging into my pleasure source. Energetically, from a 5-element perspective, it's earth, or the spleen system, nourishing metal, our lungs. This is all about supporting our boundaries, our clarity, and doing this by grounding first. It's kind of like the erotic version of the Taoist microcosmic orbit energy flow, one of the most powerful ways to shift and move energy. We move sensation instead of stuffing it. We reroute rage into our legs, down through into the earth. We breathe pleasure into our root and up our spine, not because we're escaping, but because we're choosing to transform. And then there's this whole concept of toxic bypassing as a kink. Yes, babe, a full-bodied kink. It's like a control fetish masquerading as doing the work. Think about it. We often eroticize avoidance. We tease ourselves with proximity to truth, but never quite let it in. We edge ourselves on our healing like it's a partner we don't trust enough to fully surrender to. I'm not ready. I need more healing. It's not the right time. Those aren't just cautious statements. Sometimes they're costumes for a deeper kink. And that's fear dressed up as virtue. Let's be honest, sometimes what we really mean is, I'm afraid of what will be left of me if I actually let go into this truth. And I might even be afraid of who I'll become if I let myself come undone. See, avoidance, it can feel like power. It can be hot to say no, to stay in control, to edge ourselves, our pain, until it's manageable, until it's polished, until it won't mess up our image. But here's the deal. Avoidance is only sexy if we're choosing it from power, not if it's running our nervous system behind the scenes, and definitely not if it's becoming our whole erotic identity. So here's our permission slip. We don't need to climax our pain for it to count. We don't need to sob in ceremony to prove that we're doing the work. But we also don't need to wrap ourselves in layers of not yet as a way to simply delay the pleasure of our becoming. This episode isn't about forcing our grief into orgasm, but it's about tuning into the subtle hum beneath our no and asking, is that my truth? Or is it just the kink of staying safe? Because bypassing can be a safe word, a boundary, a pause, a breath. But if it becomes our safe house, the one we never leave, the one where no lovers ever visit, the one where our body forgets what turn on feels like, then it's not a boundary anymore. It's bondage, and not the good kind. So, how do we know? Healthy or toxic bypassing for ourselves? Well, the answers lie within the messages from our body. So let's drop into the body and learn how to differentiate bypassing types in real time. I want you to ask yourself, when you're wondering if you're participating in healthy or toxic bypassing, ask, do I feel more regulated or more numb? Am I consciously choosing this pattern or simply repeating it unconsciously? Is my response right now coming from my breath or from my armor? And does this bypass preserve my dignity, or does it distort my truth? Toxic bypassing feels like tightness and disconnection, floating, detachment, shallow breath. But healthy bypassing feels like choice, flow, rhythm, and erotic detachment without disassociation. Let's make it this simple. The answers lie within the messages from our body. So, your invitation for this week: find one place in your life where you've been bypassing unconsciously. Name it. Touch it. Don't judge it. Then ask, what would healthy bypassing look like here? How can I choose sovereignty and not shut down? Maybe it's resourcing before confrontation. Maybe it's giving yourself a pleasure practice before shadow work. Maybe it's saying, I love you to your partner instead of needing to prove that you're right. Your nervous system is not the enemy. Bypassing isn't always bad. But when it becomes our only way to survive discomfort, we are not in our power. We are in pause. We don't have to bypass our truth. We can seduce it, reroute it, and ride it into a higher octave. Because pleasure is the most honest bypass of all. So if this episode resonated for you, share it with a friend or send me a message on Instagram and let me know why. I love to hear from all of you listeners out there. And cheers to 20 episodes of Quantumly Kinky.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Quantumly Kinky with Veda. Stay turned on. Till next time.